How's it going, everybody? Now I think it's time that we talk about my own experience with what I thought was overtraining syndrome. This is a very fun topic, okay? Very fun experiences indeed. Really fun looking back on it now that I've gotten my training dialed in. And I no longer train stupid anymore. I no longer eat stupid anymore. I no longer take stupid amounts of caffeine like I used to. If you haven't already, I recommend going back and listening to the first and the second part to this kind of series, I guess. The first part was a case report that I reviewed from somebody who came across some of my videos and messaged me on Facebook, and I kind of made a video response to their messages. Basically, the guy did 1,000 bodyweight squats like 2 times a week or something, and over time thought that he developed overtraining syndrome from that. Now, I guess he did other exercises too. Didn't really give me a super detailed rundown of how intense his training actually was, but nonetheless didn't really seem anywhere close to the volume or intensity of training required to induce clinical overtraining syndrome. The guy probably had a viral infection, most likely, or nutrient deficiency. Anyway, or something else could have happened, but he should have gone to a primary care physician and got checked for viral infections and stuff like that, and maybe get his thyroid checked too. Anyway, second video of this series, I basically broke down the stress recovery adaptation response, the fitness fatigue model of adaptation and recovery, and basically how that fits into proper training and how that can develop into what people consider either overreaching or hypothetical overtraining syndrome. And then I discussed the scientific evidence behind actual cases of overtraining and what populations of athletes it actually happens in and what are the factors involved at contributing to it. Long story short, it only is seen in endurance athletes who are running a couple 100 miles a week or whatever, and they're intensifying their training and volumizing their training and increasing the overall amount of training stress, while also usually starving themselves in order to get light enough to perform well in an endurance competition. Those are pretty much the only populations of people we actually see real clinically diagnosed overtraining syndrome in. And I talked about the studies on max effort, power lifts, doing 1-rep maxes every single day, multiple times a day, going ham. Multiple studies on that I talked about, and how it's, after 2 weeks, testosterone to cortisol ratio goes back to baseline, and the so-called overtraining syndrome basically does not happen. Not in them. Anyway, so that was the second video, and all about the science, basically. So now this third video, I'll talk about my own experience with overtraining syndrome and maybe talk about some of the comments I've gotten from people who are doing a freaking, hardly doing jack shit in the gym, and then they think that they're overtraining. So I think that's a fun topic to get into, and maybe we can discuss why they might be experiencing what they are, because it's probably not their freaking weak ass training. All right, so let's talk about my experiences with overtraining syndrome. So first of all, I've mostly been an athlete most of my life. Came out of the womb apparently wrapped in my mother's umbilical cord, because the doctor says I was doing backflips and jumping around in my mom's stomach because I was full of energy. And super hyper kid growing up until when I was 9 years old. Put on psychotropic medications and stuff like that, which turned me into a zombie and took away my natural energy. And then turned 14, started going out or turned 13, started exercising around the neighborhood again, started doing skateboarding, bike riding, BMX, did kind of play wrestling with the neighborhood kids when I was 13 years old or whatever. Let's see. Kind of maintained a decent amount of activity from the age of 13 onward. I did get pretty fat, like when I was on those, psychotropic, like prescription drugs that the doctors forced me on. From age 8 to like age 12, I got kind of fat from that. Yeah, so let's see. Around age 19 or so, I started to lift weights a little bit. I would run a lot. Like, I remember my routine when I first started going to the gym, like my mom got a personal trainer. I must have been like 18 at the time because my mom had just gotten a divorce from my dad and wanted to get into shape. But you know how that goes. Hired a personal trainer at like the local Spectrum at the time, which is now Gold's Gym, and got me a gym membership too. So I would go to the gym basically every day. I would run to the gym. It would be a 2-mile run. I would stop by the we call it the Abiduba Mart, me and my friends, but like the little quickie mart or whatever. I don't know. Hopefully I don't sound racist because that's not my intention, but we had a good relationship with them. They always gave us good energy drinks or good deals on energy drinks. So we were always spending our money on energy drinks. Basically, yeah, every morning run the 2 miles to the Quickie Mart, get like a 24 or 32 ounce energy drink, usually a Monster, and then a couple king size candy bars. And I would kind of drink a little bit of Monster before my workout and eat a candy bar before my workout. I keep it in my gym locker room. And I would literally run, like my first part of my workout would be running on an incline as fast as I could for like 20 to 40 minutes straight. And maybe doing intervals in between that to sustain like a high intensity without dying. But I would always be training at RP 10 on that treadmill. It was terrible, provided I was like 18 years old or whatever. And then after about 45 minutes or so of like the hardcore intense interval training or whatever on the treadmill, I would go and just lift weights. The thing is, I didn't know how to lift weights back then. So I would just do a whole bunch of machines and pretty much anything I felt like doing. And that'd be another hour. I'd be jamming out to like Emir and some of these like deathcore and hardcore bands that I was really into at the time, which I'm still into. I'm more into real death metal now. But anyway, do all the weightlifting. Then I'd go to the pool and I'd do some crazy swimming. Usually I'd take a couple swigs of my Monster energy drink and eat some candy bars like as I'm doing all this. Because the sugar and caffeine keeps me pumped up and I'm able to keep up with the dopamine rush of like working out. And and then so I go swimming, for a while and do a bunch of swimming stuff. And then I would probably lift a little bit more weights. Again, just basically just trying to get jacked up and feel good on endorphins. And then I'd usually do a little bit more running until I just like felt like absolute garbage and needed to go home. And at that time, if I remember correctly, I know I wasn't eating very much. And as a matter of fact, I was trying to like get abs basically, but I didn't know how. So I would purposely not eat food and just go train as hard as I could. Well, it was, when I was training just for the fun of it, I was doing the Monster energy drinks and stuff. But then eventually, around the time I turned 19 in 2010, that was when I started to try to starve myself and get abs. And then I started to vomit and stuff like that. It was pretty bad. So I stopped doing that. My friend, my drummer at the time, because I was in a band, he told me the reason why I was so nauseous because I needed protein. So he made me go and eat pasta for protein because that's all I had at the time. So I was like pretty malnourished and training super hard, but I was so young it didn't really matter, I guess. And at the time, wasn't reading the internet, wasn't reading health science and following YouTube gurus. It wasn't really that big back then, and I wasn't really interested anyway. So I had no clue about overtraining. All I did, I just trained my ass off because that's what I did, And at that time, actually, I was still living with my mom, so I didn't have a job at that time or anything. Well, no, actually, I was working for at a warehouse job, basically for my mother's company. That's what I was doing, but I pretty much the majority of my day was spent like just going crazy at the gym. Because I just have so much fucking energy and like combining caffeine, sugar, hardcore workouts and like an endless supply of death metal. Actually, I only had like a 2 gigabyte iPod at the time. Whatever, it was just amazing. It felt great. So I did that every single day. That's what I did. I did that 2009, the majority of 2009, and then early 2010 until my mom kind of like moved and I had to move out of her house. And long story, I stopped going to the gym, but I was in a band, whatever. Kept up with the candy bars and energy drinks. Let's see. So then fast forward to around 2012, I kind of started to leave the band life, got tired of relying on these people to like, be famous or whatever. So I started to like kind of make YouTube videos to try to become famous or whatever. Kidding, obviously. But I was making videos at the time. But basically I started going to the gym again in 2012. I was about 21 years old. And basically doing the same shit I was doing before. Hardcore interval training, just lifting weights, doing machines and cables. I had no body part split. And I was just eating like a madman. I was drinking Monsters. I was eating pasta. I was eating all of these like pizza things from the health food store. I was on like an organic food kick, thinking it was healthy because it was organic, and eating all this sugar and crazy shit. I did feel like garbage mostly because of my diet, just throwing it out there. So anyway, I basically kept up that. I started doing karate and kickboxing and a variety of different martial arts. A little bit before this time, kept that up with the intense training regimen. Trained my ass off every single day. And then around 2016, after I had like done a year of veganism, so I did a year of veganism in 2014 and 2015, and basically lost all motivation to train, lost a lot of muscle mass. I kind of trained every now and then, but I was kind of just like fiddle-faddling around. I felt more spiritual and yogic and unmotivated, whatever. Kind of stupid times, I guess, looking back on it, but it was fun nonetheless. I was going on this spiritual kick and all this crap until eventually I learned that veganism was actually basically killing me. I wasn't digesting any of those plant foods. So then I went paleo simply because the paleo diet was all the foods that my body actually could digest and didn't poop out, which was pretty crazy. And so then I got the motivation to go to the gym again. So then I got in a relationship with this really awesome girl who were now like, I guess she blocked me from like social media or whatever. But she was like really, really, really awesome. Of course, at the time, whatever. She was crazy though, like in a good way. Always trying out the newest energy drinks, like the newest like pre-workout drinks and stuff. And I started getting her to go to the gym, and she really liked working out and stuff. And we'd always go to different like Gold's gyms and stuff like that. And we had our one Gold's gym we would always go together. So basically, I got jacked up on pre-workout. Like, that was our thing. We'd go eat Mexican food, get jacked up on pre-workout, and go lift weights and stuff. Well, anyway, man, I would drink the like 500, 600 milligrams caffeine. I was still doing martial arts training, kickboxing, sparring, etc. And basically every single day, my routine was even worse than before. Because now I actually knew about barbell training. Before I was just doing machines and cables and stuff. But now I actually learned about barbell training. Barbell training is really stressful on the body. Barbell training is where you can get some pretty serious problems. Not like overtraining syndrome, but just like pains and aches and feeling like crap if you overdo it. So anyway, I would slam 600 milligrams of caffeine from pre-workout, contained Yohimbe. Basically, at this point, I was taking Yohimbe too. Okay, I was taking a shit ton of Yohimbe and a lot of caffeine. I couldn't sleep, probably because of the caffeine and stuff, and probably because of the, foods I was eating at the time. And I would go to the gym, and I would do hardcore, high-intensity interval training. I would do these crazy sprints on the treadmill, on an incline, and I would push myself like beyond failure over and over again, because I thought that was strength and conditioning for some reason. And I would do that for a whole hour a lot of times. And if I felt like crap, I felt like it's because I needed more caffeine or something. So it was a pretty bad cycle of pain. So that was just the high intensity interval training. I would do all sorts of like tire flips and like plyometric jumps and burpee circuits. And I would max out on deadlifts, squats. Deadlifts and squats usually every single day. I would hit a max effort squat and deadlift. My back hurt like a motherfucker. And it's not necessarily because deadlifts are bad or because my form was bad. It's just because I was overdoing it. I was just literally Bulgarian method every fucking day. I was training to a max on deadlift, a max on squat. I was doing tire flips. Anytime the gold or normal Gold's Gym, when they bring new equipment, I'd have to fuck around with the new equipment. So I was pushing sleds. I was trying to learn clean and jerks and Olympic lifts. My form was jack shit because I was always trying to hit PRs and shit. I was killing myself, bro. I was killing myself. And so jacked up on caffeine all the time. And we'd go to like buffets after the gym, or we'd go to a Mexican restaurant. I'd get like pound of barbacoa with a shit ton of rice and cheese and stuff. But I felt like crap. These days I realize it's because, well, I had some food intolerances. I was overdosing on caffeine. The Yohimbe drove me crazy. Yohimbe literally fucked my brain up. It was bad. Yohimbe has a tendency to do that for everyone. Just look at my Yohimbe side effects video. But I think the biggest thing, I think the caffeine and the Yohimbe was the biggest thing. Way too much. But, and I wasn't sleeping because of all that. And I wasn't really eating enough protein. I was probably getting 100 grams a day, and a guy my size training that hard needed at least 200 grams. But I would never eat enough protein. Not until 2018, but I'll get to that in a bit. So, yeah, I would literally go max effort, squat and deadlift every single day, max effort clean and jerk. I would do deficit deadlifts and all sorts of weird variations. And I was doing the interval training every day. I would hit the heavy bag every day. I would try to go on long walks later on because I normally like them, but I was so fucking exhausted from all that training I couldn't enjoy it. I remember my ex-girlfriend, she'd always take me to concerts, and I felt like crap all the time. Like, I couldn't go to these concerts because I was basically fucked up from the stupid training I was doing. Because I was legitimately like, as overtrained as an overtrainer is going to get training that way. Okay, not like real overtraining syndrome. If I took a couple weeks off, I would have been back to normal, but especially if I removed the caffeine and shit. But I would have had caffeine withdrawals probably, and I still wouldn't have noticed anything. Well, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, and I would do a lot of accessories. I would do cables. I would still do machines. I would always train to failure. It was really bad. Like, I had shoulder pain. I had, like, my grip was always fucked up. Because I was training to failure all the time. Everything I did was to failure. And it's funny because now I'm like, I've done years of studying actual research on how to actually train properly. And everyone always talks about, like, if you do go to failure, only do one set to failure. Even the people who train to failure, who do that style of training as a method, they only do like 1, 2, maybe 3 sets per exercise to failure. But I was doing 5, 6, 7 sets to failure on everything. I was doing as many reps as possible on deadlifts over and over again, squats over and over again, pull-ups and lat pull-downs. Lat pull-downs were excruciating to me because I was always trying to do as much weight and as much reps as I could. So my training was fucked up, okay? It was just fucking retarded. It was just stupid. And I felt like garbage all the time. And I had all the symptoms of overtraining. I had heart palpitations all the time. I couldn't breathe. Like, I had this breathing problem, but I think that was probably a food allergy, probably dairy protein. What else? I couldn't sleep at all. I was always, like, angry and mood swings and shit, but I think that was probably the caffeine and Yohimbe on top of the overtraining, probably. But it was probably the Yohimbe and the caffeine. But I had severe mood swings, horrible. always kind of like on edge, like really, like just physical stress. Like I couldn't explain it. It didn't make any sense to me. But I could never sleep. My sleep was absolutely terrible. And my appetite was pretty low, although I would eat usually. I would eat my one giant meal after training, then sometimes, and usually like dinner as well. But I wasn't like hungry the way that like you should be, especially training that hard. And all that caffeine probably suppressed my appetite too. So, and I did this from like 2016, 2016, all the way until about. So it was more like let's say October 2015, all the way until about December 2018. Okay. So that was 16, 17. Yeah, it was about 3 years. It was about a total of 3 years where I was training like an absolute I don't even know how to explain it. It's so stupid. Just max out on everything for hours over and over again. Max out cardio, max out strength training, all of that crap. Okay, over and over again with all that caffeine. And I couldn't sleep either. And I was under eating protein. I survived, but how did I get out of it? Well, eventually, in December of 2018, so I had like a hip injury. And I don't remember how I sustained that hip injury, but I had a hip injury. And this was after having lingering pains and all that other crap, but, from the stupid training. But I had strained my hip or something. Doctor told me I wasn't going to be able to lift weights again for like 16 weeks or something. So I basically took 2 weeks of a deload because I had to, because I hurt my hip. Well, during that time, I also went on the Carnivore Diet, and I have a whole video series from like that whole month. It was like a 30-day challenge, carnivore challenge for myself. And I did that because I saw all these people on the Carnivore Diet, and they got like super lean, and they had these crazy performance improvements, and basically it seemed like they became superhuman and all their problems went away. Okay. And that was interesting because I started eating the Carnivore Diet. It was about December 8th, I believe, when I started the Carnivore Challenge. And my diet went from 100 grams of protein a day to about 300 grams of protein a day. And I went from eating about 2,800 calories on average to eating over 5,000 calories a day on average. And I had stopped doing cardio because my hip was fucked up. And the weight training I started doing was pretty light, submaximal technique work for the Olympic lifts for like 2 weeks. So then, so actually it was only 1 week. Or no, it was 2 weeks, but I had done it. I started the deload before the Carnivore Diet. So, but yeah, so it was like, so I started eating 300 grams of protein and over 5,000 calories coming almost exclusively from butter, coconut oil, meat, cheese, sour cream. That was my fucking diet every single day. And that was December 8th of 2018. Okay. And miraculously, within the first like 2 days, I started feeling amazing. And I think that this is because I removed food intolerances, like the plants and things that I was having trouble digesting. But I think the real thing is, for once in my training career, I was actually eating enough protein. Because before I was eating half the recommended amount by even the most mainstream sports experts. I was eating like half a gram. I was eating half a gram of protein per pound of body weight. It's like half the amount I should have been eating. But when I went on the Carnivore Diet, I fucking tripled it. Started eating 300 grams a day, and my caloric intake almost doubled. And I removed carbs completely too, which was pretty crazy. And I started feeling just like a god, is literally how I'd explain it. Like, I literally felt euphoric, I felt recovered, and I started having this deep motivation to actually go to the gym all of a sudden. I didn't have that before. before the carnivore diet, I really just went to the gym because it's the only way I can prevent myself from going completely insane. Now, I will say I had stopped drinking pre-workout and stuff for, like 4 months before that. So it wasn't even that I like started lowering my caffeine intake. Because when I'm carnivore, I just kept up my normal bulletproof coffee that I was already drinking before. It's just that now bulletproof coffee was like my breakfast and stuff, whatever. So yeah, because I had already kind of like removed the yohimbe and caffeine intake in August of 2018. So yeah, and my sleep hadn't improved with that. So, and I was probably drinking more coffee on the carnivore diet. I know coffee's not like carnivore, it's a plant or whatever, but whatever, man. I allowed coffee. Okay, whatever. But my freaking sleep immediately improved when I went on carnivore. Like literally, my sleep immediately improved. I started being able to sleep again. My hip pain just completely went away within like 4 days on a carnivore diet. My desire to go train was at an all-time high. And then I started hitting amazing PRs on my Olympic lifts. I went from power clean, like clean and jerks, full clean and jerks. I started off with 185 pounds for like sets of 3 to being able to do a 185-pound clean and jerk for like a set of 9 within 2 weeks. That's pretty crazy for a clean and jerk. Provided you shouldn't be doing AMRAPs to clean and jerks, but that's just what I felt like doing, and that's what I did. And I couldn't do squats because my hips were fucked up. I couldn't even bench press because it hurt so bad. So all I did was like Olympic lifts and like pull-ups and overhead press and shit like that. So anyway, I actually started training properly too. I had started training properly before then in that year. But anyway, it was like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, clean and jerk day. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, like upper body, like, push and pull. So, and my snatch, like, dramatically improved. I went from snatching like 155 pounds for like a set of 3 to power snatching 185 pounds for like a set of 5 or something within just like 3 weeks, which is pretty crazy. My my max effort power clean, I think I hit a PR of like 225 pounds for like a set of 3 or something like that. And that was, I went from power clean of like I don't know, 235 for a single to like 225 for like sets of 3 or whatever within a couple weeks. Or no, it was a clean and jerk. I went from like a clean and jerk of like 225 for a set of, or no, actually, it was like 240. I don't remember. But I had a dramatic improvement in my freaking strength is what I'm trying to get at, guys and girls, whoever's watching this. So anyway, after that, I really just, I joined like actual like MMA school, an actual MMA gym. And I started focusing more on grappling, and I don't know, I started to do more targeted training. I started to do exclusively like Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, and like boxing, kickboxing type shit. I was no longer just doing like endless freaking intervals and stupid like just crazy gym shit, max effort gym shit just for the shit of it. Like, 'cause that's what I was doing from like 2015 to like 2018. To the end of 2017, I was basically just like doing interval training and all this crazy shit and just maxing out all the time on every freaking lift going to failure, drinking too much caffeine, too much of the time, not eating enough protein. And early 2018, I started to do more Olympic weightlifting stuff. I started to follow better programs. Then I started to remove the caffeine. Then I started eating enough protein. And so basically, when you have clear goals established and you're actually doing a real protocol designed to actually like help you achieve those goals, and you're eating a diet that's conducive to performance, you're actually tracking food. Because I was actually tracking food. I had a chronometer log the whole time, pretty much a lot of 2018, but especially on the carnivore diet. So I was tracking my protein, and I could pull that shit up right now, I think, if it's saved. And you'll see I was eating over 300 grams of protein a day and over 5,000 calories. So one more thing is, it was crazy. I was like 205 pounds or so, and I was flabby and fattish, right? I was like pretty flabby when I was eating 2,800 calories of like mostly carbs and less protein. And then when I tripled my protein intake and doubled my caloric intake and removed the carbs, I went from like 205 pounds down to like 185 within the 3 weeks on that carnivore experiment. And I got drastically leaner. My strength went up, and I started recovering better. So one thing that I've found in my experience that just like changes the game, you get leaner, you get stronger, you sleep better, and you recover better when you focus your diet on protein and you get more than enough protein. My entire life just improved. So that was the turning point, and I basically have kind of built on that to where I am now from that point forward. And the changes I felt were like extraordinary. So, looking back at all this, what would I say it was? I wouldn't call it overtraining syndrome, because for me, it was kind of like feeling like absolute trash, injured all the time, whatever, to all of a sudden feeling like amazing. All I did was up my calories, like double my calories and triple my protein. And I removed all the carbs, and I was taking a lot of MCT oil. It probably helped boost my mood and shit. So, yeah. I think it's just a matter of under-eating protein, training stupid, and again, like, if you look at this routine that I did, I still wouldn't say that was clinical overtraining syndrome, but I went crazy. This was not just like multiple sets of submaximal, body weight squats up to 1,000 reps, and then, do an upper body day and then repeat. Like, that's cool and all, but that's not anywhere near as intense as what I was doing. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but I would spend hours on the heavy bag every single day. Hours on the heavy bag every day during this time, just trying to improve my kickboxing, because I really sucked for the first couple of years of it. Maxing out all the time, hardcore interval training for hours. It was crazy. But I definitely felt I had every symptom of overtraining syndrome during that time, and it was horrible. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible, okay? I'd say, like, sure, I was performing well. I was very, very active, but mentally and physically, I was probably in my worst health ever. And I say that mostly as how I felt. I was training hardcore. Most people would see me as like this crazy athletic motherfucker. Most people did think I was this crazy in shape guy who was just going balls to the wall every day at the gym. Everyone knew me at the gym. I got real popular because I was always there. But I felt like garbage. I slept like garbage. My mood was garbage. And I didn't know what was wrong. I blamed it on everything else. But it was probably the caffeine, the Yohimbe, first of all. The lack of sleep that came with it. The shitty diet, low protein, and the shitty fucking training. So, yeah. But did I die? No, I didn't freaking die. Did I have like months of recovery before I went back to baseline? Not really. Maybe because I gradually kind of started to implement the right protocols over time and lower my caffeine intake and stuff, maybe. But no, there was no like I remember I was peeing all the time too before I went carnivore. I thought I was diabetic, but doctors told me I was good and whatever. I was really whatever. So yeah. So let's kind of wrap this up. In conclusion, a lot of times so if you like it should be a pretty obvious answer to somebody as to what the problem is, but generally speaking, it's only obvious to people who have maybe gone through it before and came out the other end, or someone who actually understands how this shit works. I wouldn't call what I went through overtraining syndrome. Like, if we're being specific and honest about it. Okay, it's not the clinical syndrome you see in like endurance athletes. But it's exactly the same exact freaking phenomena that people experience when they leave me comments on my YouTube videos, or they message me about it, or people you see on message boards who think they like burnt out their CNS, or they have adrenal fatigue or whatever. So, and I could have had a nutrient deficiency that the high meat diet like solved, right? Because I have a lot of subscribers, plenty of people who say liver kind of healed them from chronic fatigue. I kind of mentioned one of these case reports in one of my videos. So, yeah. And there's a lot of things that I've done since then to optimize things to where I feel way better, more recovered than ever before. And something I forgot to mention is that just because you don't sleep and you don't eat properly doesn't mean that you're going to overtrain either. I'll have to make another video about that, but I've had myself, like, where I hadn't slept at all in like 3 days, and I come to the gym and I hit like a deadlift PR. And I know plenty of people. I had a client actually recently who got hungover, didn't really sleep worth a damn, and he wasn't eating very good. And that day he was messaging me like, bro, I can't go to the gym. I like got really drunk last night, got hungover, blah, blah, blah. I feel like shit. I told him, look, man, most people, they hit their best PRs when they're hungover and haven't slept well. So I said, come to the gym, you're going to hit a fucking PR, just watch. And he trusted me. He came to the gym, and he hit like a 20-pound PR in his squat. And like a 20-pound PR in his deadlift, and then like a 5-pound PR in his pause bench. Only because he was too scared to like actually go for a real PR and bench. But, I have this whole time I've had, and this guy is around my age, like 30. So, and then I had a client who was younger. He was like 21 years old or something. But that kid, he was going through some serious financial issues. He had like refrigerator problem. All of his food like spoiled because his power got shut off. And that wasn't because of finances. That was because the energy place messed up, apparently. But all of his food just completely like spoiled. And so he was living on ramen noodles and hadn't gone to the gym for like 3 months. And the last session he did was like a max out deadlift session with me. I think he deadlifted like 320 or something that day. And he was a skinny guy. He was like 140 pounds when I first got him, and then I got him up to like 170, and I had him drop like 7% body fat during that time, which I don't know how to explain. But anyway, so here's the thing. He had like a 320-pound deadlift, and then he went 3 months where I hadn't seen him, hadn't come to the gym. He ate only ramen noodles, hadn't really been sleeping. He was working 3 different jobs and shit. Comes to the gym 3 months later. Or it wasn't 3 months. It was like 6 weeks or something. It was like a month and a half. Comes back to the gym after basically being extremely like malnourished and sleep deprived and all this shit. Hadn't gone to the gym in 6 weeks. And he hits like a 40-pound PR in his freaking deadlift. No, it was a 35-pound PR. He went from like a 320-pound deadlift for a set of 1 to like 355-pound deadlift. And we were both shocked as hell. I was like, bro, how are you sleep deprived, malnourished, eating nothing but ramen noodles, working 3 jobs and whatnot, on his feet all day as a cook and shit like that. And this guy comes back and slams a 35-pound PR. So I found this in my own self where I hit my previous deadlift max for like a set of 4 or some shit after like 3 days of being sleep deprived and whatnot. I've had like sessions where I would like hit crazy PRs and like overhead press, and the very next day I would like hit crazy PRs on snatches. I've done the Bulgarian method. I've done crazy shit where I just keep hitting PRs under the worst of situations. And so basically, if you think you're overtraining, you're probably not. Like, not if you're just doing resistance training or even like body weight training. It's just that there's something else going on. Maybe you have malaria or COVID or something. You probably have viral infection, might have vitamin A deficiency, might have a deficiency, might not be enough protein. And yeah, I've had clients who, for whatever reason, they refuse to eat enough protein. They insist that they don't have enough time to eat protein, even though they're like working from home, whatever. And I'll see them at the gym, and they're training balls to the wall, max effort every time. We're talking resistance training. They're trying to like hit as many reps as possible on lifts and go into the maximum. They can't eat enough protein. They can't sleep, and they have extreme anxiety symptoms and things. They basically have all the symptoms of overtraining, but they're only eating like a can of tuna a day. And I've had many situations like this, many clients, and I keep telling them, look, you're just under eating. If you're going to be training this way, you need to eat enough protein. The reason why you feel like garbage, you can't sleep, you have all these problems, you're not making progress on your lifts, is because you are not eating enough protein. And then when they start to actually eat enough protein, I catch them with cheese sticks to the gym and shit like that, and I look at their food log, they're actually logging their food all of a sudden, and they're eating enough protein. Now their sleep regulates. Now their training starts to improve. They don't feel like an anxious wreck anymore. And voila, they no longer have symptoms of overtraining syndrome. Now, if you go back to the second video in this series, you'll hear about, net catabolism versus the ability to rebuild and recover from training. The amino acid pool, neurotransmitters created from the amino acids you eat in protein complexes. Of course you're going to feel like shit if you're not eating enough amino acids to like supply your neurotransmitters. So let's see. There's Sylvie Von something. She's like a Muay Thai fighter. It's like the 8 Limbs Bones podcast or some shit like that. Just look up Sylvie Muay Thai or something on the YouTube. She has several articles she wrote on her blog about overtraining syndrome and how she was an American woman who just like had no previous training background, moved to Thailand and started training with the Thais as like a professional fighter, like all day, every day. And because she didn't believe in overtraining syndrome and she kept pushing herself, her body adapted, and all of a sudden she's able to compete with the Thais. She has like over 100 fights now. And she just randomly decided to become a pro athlete one day. And she started just training balls to the wall with no rest periods. And, there you go. And she doesn't have, like, overtraining syndrome, although she might have lingering symptoms of fatigue and things like that. So, what else? I had a comment from some random passerby who, I don't even remember if it's on my video or what, but this guy said he was doing a push-pull leg split. He said one day he would do deadlift, one day he'd do squat, one day he'd do bench press or something like that. And basically he said he tried to hit a PR on squat, bench, and deadlift like twice a week or something like that. Or maybe he said 4 times a week or something. I don't know. And that was like the main like meat and potatoes of his program is like hit a PR on squat, bench, and deadlifts multiple times a week. Okay. And then he said he had overtraining syndrome after 3 months of doing that program, and he said he couldn't recover for like 5 months or something. He said he just like basically became bedridden for 5 months. And I'm thinking to myself, you're maxing out on squat, bench, and deadlift, or so he said. I don't think he was actually, from what he said, from what it sounded like, he wasn't really even doing that. But you basically did a very, like, you did half of the Bulgarian method, not even. You you just maxed out on squat, bench, and deadlift a couple of times a week for 3 months, and now you're out of commission for 5 months, and you're like, you basically killed yourself. Like, bro, like, you didn't overtrain, bro. Like, and that guy he was like convinced that he like overtrained. He was convinced that he somehow dug himself a deep enough hole with such a like low volume routine that he somehow, it took him double the time to recover than it did to like create it in the first place. And look, if some shit like that happens to you, be a smart person and go get checked for viruses, okay? And maybe try eating enough protein. Like, look at your protein intake, and also try eating liver, like 4 ounces of calf liver, not beef liver, not grown liver, young liver, calf liver, because it tastes more tolerable. Because you're probably lacking in vitamin A and protein. Is probably what's going on. That can cause severe fatigue like that. So you could do like a shit ton of egg yolks, I guess. 12 egg yolks. Or get a retinol supplement, I guess. I wouldn't recommend that. But anyway, yeah. So, you know, and I've had probably tons of other experiences I can look at. Tons of other. But, you know, I train fighters, competitive fighters. And these people are like the closest thing to overtraining you're going to get without being a marathon athlete. So some of my fighters, they'll train 3 to 4 hours a day, sometimes more, sometimes 6 hours a day of just like skill work, just MMA, just kickboxing, mitt work, you know, skills and drills, sparring. And then they'll do their strength and conditioning. Sometimes sometimes they'll do interval work and crap that I didn't prescribe them, multiple times a week. And then before they worked with me, they started to like malnourish themselves to try to cut weight for camp. They'd basically just like eat like 4 ounces of steak or something and then salad the rest of the day. And that was their idea of a cut. And they'd lose their libido, sleep would go to shit, they'd have mood swings like for like 4 to 8 weeks, malnourishing themselves trying to cut weight. Well, this is like an exaggeration. I'm not talking about anyone specific, but this is a typical thing you'll see with like competitive fighters. They train balls to the wall, super high volume, very high intensity, max effort every session, starving themselves to cut weight. And then like they fight, and after they fight, they just like go back to normal and they're good. They experience mood swings, loss of libido. They usually injure themselves when they train this way, and sleep problems and mood swings and shit. But like a couple days, like 4 to 5, like usually they take a week off afterwards, but like they're back to normal after a week, you know. So it's like they don't really overtrain, you know. Of course, provided everyone's different, but it usually takes quite a long time for you to dig a hole that deep. So anyway, I think I'm going to cut it off here because I should really be in bed. I just did 2 hours of video on overtraining syndrome. But yeah, you're probably not overtraining. If it takes you longer than like 2 weeks after you just like completely rest, it takes you longer than 2 weeks to feel better again, there's something else going wrong. You should see a fucking doctor, and not one who just lazily tells you you're overtraining without actually doing a freaking cortisol to testosterone ratio test, okay? All right. You don't just do 1,000 body weight squats, you know, a couple times a week, and then like, you know, do it for 3 months, feeling perfectly fine, and you like suddenly it hits you and you like have overtraining syndrome. It doesn't happen that way. Anyway, yeah, so that's it. Talk to you guys next time.